Welcome, everybody. My name is Benjamin Poole, head trader here at verifiedinvesting.com. So, yesterday I put out a video on 7 stocks that had upside potential. Today, I'm going to put out another 7 stocks, one that's already completed a measured move on a head and shoulders pattern, one that could be setting up for a head and shoulders pattern breakdown, which is ORCL, and then a couple other stocks that you guys requested, but 7 in total. This is the theme of today's trading video. So the first one we're going to go over is Netflix. Here's the chart of Netflix. Oh, before I get started, if you could just hit that like button, it really helps out the algorithm. And thanks for the continued comments. Your support is extremely valuable. I really appreciate you guys. All right, here's the chart of Netflix. I had a couple different pivot lows. So here was a first level of support, $74.94 on Netflix. You always have to identify where the next level of support is. And that was this pivot top right in this area, around $72.43. We did break below that, but look at this major pivot. So this is really your accumulation zone on Netflix, all the way down to this high pivot point. Now, as you can see, this was resistance and pretty significant resistance. Price action got back up to this high pivot point, got above it a little bit, came right back in, got rejected, and then look at what happened. It not only gapped above this $69.01 level, but it also gapped above this $72.43 level. Those were some pretty significant resistance, and it gapped above that. So that tells us that when price action gets back into this area, at one point, there were a ton of buyers in this area, a lot of price action. So I was anticipating it coming down a little bit further. However, this 72.43 is that first support zone. Now, we're technically still in a downtrend on Netflix. Now, how you can tell a downtrend is the price action is continuing lower. So what we need to happen now on Netflix, $74.94. Price action needs to close back inside or back above this low pivot point. Once it does that, its next level of resistance is $77.38. If we can reattack this low pivot, make a continuation move, and then come back in, this is going to be a ton of support on Netflix. It hasn't done that yet. It actually hasn't closed back above. But once it does that, then we're going to see a lot higher prices on the chart of Netflix. Right now, though, still pay attention because it is still technically in a downtrend. If you put on the RSI, look at that. It got below the 20. This is telling us this was capitulation towards the lower end of the charts. Decent volume. Look at that, 74.99 million shares. This is telling us that the likelihood that the bottom is in for Netflix is extremely high. Obviously, it doesn't guarantee it. That's why we have $69.01 as our next support level. CRM. I just noticed this. So you have this shoulder here, head here, shoulder here. Look at the measured move. It's all the way down to this low pivot point. Look at all this price consolidation. Price was support, support was resistance, and then big move up. Your first level of support, as you can see in the charts, $167.35 was that first level of support. What you have to monitor is how many times that support level's hit. It's hit 1, 2, third time. Now all of a sudden that becomes weaker, and that's why we got this nice flush out. Now that we've gotten below this low pivot and then we reattacked it and closed above, this doesn't guarantee that we're going to reverse on CRM or on Salesforce. What we need is a continuation move. I would love to see it getting back up to 167.35, close right at that level, come back in. My buy level at that point would be $154.69. If you're already in it, this is your line in the sand now. Now that we've already dropped below it again, we've recaptured it. Once we fail to hold that support level, then all of a sudden we're heading down to 126.01. So be a little bit more careful with CRM and definitely monitor the price action and what's going on. Just like Netflix, we're still technically in a downtrend. If you switch on the RSI, we haven't really gotten to this oversold condition before a bounce. Got up to the 70, came straight down back in. Decent volume right here. Look at that. 57 million shares. This is showing us that there was distribution, and that is why this is likely the bottom in Salesforce, even though we never broke the 30 on CRM. And now all of a sudden we have the potential to go higher. So again, 154.69 is that level that I would like you guys to pay attention to. If we start reattacking the 167.35 and get back above it, this is going to be a support level, and then we could look for another push to the upside. For me, $209.82 is a gap in the charts. That is where likely we're going to stall out on CRM. And again, if it does come back in, these are your support levels. Amazon, we're still technically in a downtrend. Look at this pivot top. We got a low, lower high, lower low. So what we need to see on Amazon is price to stay above $226.50. This is a previous gap in the charts, low pivots. And then here's the secondary level of support. Gap in the charts. Price was rejected several times. Finally, scooped up. The buyer scooped this up, drove it above this 231 and the 226 level that was being met with resistance. This is one of the reasons that it's a lot of support. So what we have to monitor on Amazon is what happens with the price action of this downsloping trend line. If we can recapture this, get back above this gap at 234.27, make a continuation move, my plan would be to play this on a retrace of the scene of the crime, which would be right back here at $226.50. Not every time you get a breakout with a continuation move and then a retrace. But that is the play, and that is the reason that you would wait for a potential reversal, unless, of course, you're already in it at 226.50. If you are, this is your line in the sand. This is where you would hold on to it. If it does start closing below that on a daily closing basis, you've got 1, 2, 3, possibly 4 hits, and then all of a sudden the bottom's going to fall out, and you're heading all the way into this pivot area for the next level of support at $212.10. Look at this. Previous gap in the charts. It could go a little bit lower, right? So you do have this low pivot, previous gap, pivot low, price consolidation before this massive gap to the upside. So instead of 220, maybe look around $211.44. This is going to be a major support zone on AMZN if we do get below $226.50. Right now, again, that is my line in the sand, and I have to see what happens with this downsloping trend line right here. Alibaba, secondary, and I just did this for fun. This was a shoulder, head, shoulder. Now the head is massive on this thing. So if you take the pivot top all the way down to the neckline, and where the neckline breaks, this is saying that there's a downside target of around $36.65 if this measured move finally plays out. I don't necessarily think it's going to. This was just kind of for fun. What I'm noticing, though, is you've got this pivot top right here in the charts of Alibaba sitting at $90.46. That's actually where I was anticipating price action coming back into. As you can see, it was a little bit of resistance. Price came back in, never was really support, even though it wasn't really a ton of support and resistance, and it just kind of failed. Here it was a little bit, and then we broke out. So this is the line in the sand that I'd be looking for. I'd look to pick this up around $90.46. And if it does close below that on a daily closing basis, as you can see, it makes a sharp continuation move to the downside. And then I would look for another support level, and that would be right here around $81.92, all the way down to this previous double bottom area around $80.06. So those are the couple different levels that I'm looking at on BABA. And just like the other charts, we are still technically in a downtrend. Where are we at on the RSI? Oh, we are extremely low on the RSI. So we have to look at what's going on with volume. Volume is decent, not overly extended. So this doesn't necessarily give me the same indication that there's going to be capitulation, but it's not often that you see the RSI this low. What I do notice, though, is we are still technically in an oversold condition, but just because we're in an oversold condition doesn't mean that oversold condition can't stay oversold for an extended period of time. So again, $90.46, watch for that level. If it breaks there, $81.92. Now, if we start getting a bid to the upside, you're going to have some resistance right here, basically where it stalled out at $85.87. If we can recapture that, I think we're heading up to about $103.79. And then if we can get above that, you have a couple different gaps in the charts. However, what I'd be monitoring is what happens with the price action on this upsloping trend line. I would love to see it getting back up to about 123, all the way back up to about $125 on the chart of Alibaba. let's take a look at silver. I didn't have this drawn in my charts. I wish I would have. This is a pivot low here, secondary hit. Look at this third hit on SLV. And this is the iShares Silver Trust. So they don't actually have to hold any silver. $51.76, previous gap in the charts, came back in, hit this gap, hit this downsloping trend line beautifully at $50.55. Nice bid to the upside. So this is your buy level. If we can drop in a little bit more to $49.25, this is going to be a major support level on SLV. And if you go to the actual silver chart right here, it kind of gives you an idea of where that level is. And that'd be right here at a retrace to this breakout zone. Retrace is the scene of the crime after this resistance, got gapped up, come back in 7331. That is your major support level. So because we're overly extended to the downside on silver, technically we're still in a downtrend on silver as well, just like a lot of these other beaten up charts. Still in a support range though. So you've got all these pivots right here, all this price consolidation. This bull flag is going to be a ton of support on silver. On the upside, if you're already in it, if you decided to jump the gun and get in before this high pivot point right here at 54.3731, this is the line in the sand. If we can recapture this low pivot point at 61.0220, then all of a sudden we're going to see a nice push to the upside. Next level of major resistance is going to be 67.897. I love the chart of silver. May need to come in a little bit more, but that is going to be a ton of support if it goes down. So really, you're in a nice accumulation zone right now. Oracle was another one you guys were talking about. Somebody had mentioned that there's a potential weekly time frame on ORCL could take this down to zero. Well, weekly time frame, shoulder, head, shoulder. Here's your major support level on the chart of ORCL, and that's $138.06. This is a good company, good profits, good earnings. This is my level to buy. I know it's got a head and shoulders pattern. If this does trigger and we start getting a sell-off, you have a ton of support. You're going to have a lot of support sitting right here at 125.56, and then all the way down to about $102.95 down to $100 whole round number. So this is something that I wouldn't necessarily mind dollar cost averaging into, all the way from $138 all the way back down to $100 a share on ORCL. Even though the head and shoulders pattern is there, and now that we've created this nice pivot top, we are technically in a downtrend. So if it does break and you're a little bit more conservative on a daily closing basis with a continuation move, then all of a sudden you can look to stop out and then look for your next support level on ORCL. Really depends on how you play this thing. Overall, I do like the chart of ORCL. It's just going to be a great swing trade for a nice bounce, even if I have to dollar cost average into it. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying go in with your full position. I'm saying start with like a 1 to 2% of your portfolio, just in case you have to dollar cost average into a trade like this. All the Adobe, a couple of you guys asked about this. So here we go. Look at this downtrend. Pivot top, pivot low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high. Just continue the march. Watch the RSI. Oversold condition. We got a little bit of a bounce, but look at how the RSI failed to get above the 70. Then we got this nice sell-off into a ton of support. So this $200 level on Adobe is the level for a good buying opportunity. Ton of support, whole round number. And you go to the weekly time frame and look at how sharply this has fallen, all the way from this pivot top at $638 all the way down. That is a 70% drop. Now, I will say Adobe's facing a lot of competition. AI is doing a lot of Adobe's job. Now, all of a sudden, graphic designers don't necessarily need to use it. So you got to identify where your next level of support is. 198.19, if we zoom in, is that support level. And then you've got this major pivot in the charts. I'm not saying a major pivot, I did say, but it's not really a major pivot. But you have a pivot top right here at $186.27. And then if it does break that level, though, you've still got this gap that needs to be filled at $152. So although we are into a great opportunity of support, if 186.27 does fail, this could ignite some additional selling pressure, and it could drive this down to $153.38. Overall, Adobe is acting really, really weak. So be extra cautious with this if you're deciding to get into this. As long as we can stay above 186.27, though, I think it favors a push to the upside, especially as oversold as Adobe is. So that's what I have for you guys. Thank you so much for all of your kind comments. And if you guys are taking some of the trades that I'm saying that I would take, congratulations. The majority of them do work out. Some of them do need some massaging and navigating through them. But overall, these are some really good support levels that a lot of these stocks are getting into. And again, just because they're into a lot of support doesn't mean that those support levels have to hold. And so just monitor your trades like your money depends on it, because really it does. Anyway, that's what I have for you guys. Thank you so much again for all the kind words. Thanks for the comments, and we'll see you next time in the charts. You guys have a great rest of your day. Take care.